Are they coming from outer space? Are they human-made? What is the research that you're doing showing people?
We certainly have instantaneous accelerations and, thousands of Gs or 10,000s of Gs, squash humans against the wall.
Do you think there's actual entities involved that we don't know the identity of?
Pieces of data that you get from flying saucers is you get high magnetic fields.
Can we recreate some of the technology that we've uncovered from these objects?
The top part of the craft is rotating in one direction, the bottom half of the craft is rotating the other direction. So you have this notion of counter rotation.
They don't move like aircrafts designed by humans. How do you explain the physics? Like, they don't move by propulsion, if I'm not mistaken.
Some classified circles, has humanity figured out how to manipulate and control gravity? And the answer is...
We are back for another episode. Thank you so much for being here. And we just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you who watch and listen for your continued support of being plugged into our platform. We also want to thank our listeners in Singapore, Chicago, Illinois, Phoenix, Arizona, Montreal, and Quebec City out in Quebec, Canada, Kenora, Ontario, and our listeners in Germany. It's really cool just to be connected with all of you, and we really appreciate you guys tuning in and being a part of this project. It's been a lot of fun for the last several years, and we're just so glad that you're a part of it. So thank you, and you can always check us out at mikestpodcast.com. We're also on Apple, Spotify, so you can check us out there as well. Our guest today is a leading authority on the topic of UFOs. He holds a degree in mathematics and computer science. He lectures frequently on the subject of UFOs, and he's written numerous books. He's also the CEO of Frontline Aerospace, which is a leading innovator in the aerospace industry. Please welcome to the podcast, Ryan S. Wood. Ryan, thanks so much for making time to be with us today.
Well, it's great to be here, Mike. Happy to share my insights with your audience, and hopefully it'll be provocative and interesting for the listeners.
I think so. We've covered this topic before, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion today. There's all these reports of sightings, UFO sightings and crash sites, which I know you're a specialist on those. And where are these things coming from? Are they coming from outer space? Are they human-made? What is the research that you're doing showing people?
Yeah. I mean, I chose long ago to specialize in sort of two areas, UFO crashes and government documents, leaked government documents, the Majestic 12 documents specifically, and their authenticity. So that's been my sort of overlay or thoughts. I mean, all the other elements of ufology, from the lights in the sky and video analysis and abductions, and those are all interesting and curiosity, but that's really sort of secondary to my experience. So as to I guess your question was, where are they coming from? It's complicated as everything. I mean, there seems to be multiple races with multiple agendas coming from multiple locations, with coordination and without coordination. And so you have a real mixed bag of experiences for humanity, and that's the nature of the enigma of ufology.
Yeah, it seems like there's belief that these beings or this race of people actually reside in the earth. And I know that's not really where you specialize, but I just wanted to pick your brain because you've studied this stuff, you've been to these crash sites, you've done a lot more research than the average person on this. And I mean, I just can't help but wonder, is this stuff human made? Like, what's your hypothesis on that?
Yeah, I mean, the question of where do they come from? I mean, certainly they come from across the solar system or across the galaxy or from other galaxies, but when they get here, they have to make the decision of, well, am I a disposable biological, robot, which I crash and leave, or do I settle hey, let's go get a nice cozy place underneath Antarctica, or in the Southern California ocean, or in the Pyrenees in Europe, uh, or some other place, and hang out for um, a millennium, uh, or a long, long time, and
Yeah.
observe this kindergarten planet as it emerges through this tumultuous time of how do you manage uh, atomic energy and global ecological destruction and population explosion and wars and, and and widespread inhumanity to man. So there's lots of reasons why they sort of stay and look, but where they come from is sort of all over the map. I think certainly inside, outside, interdimensionally is another thing, or time traveling. There seems to be some linkage between gravitational control and time manipulation. I mean, um, that's right out of Einstein's special relativity.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I mean, it's obvious that these people, these beings are advanced, far more advanced than we are. And, on the engineering side of things, which is where you're more versed in this stuff, I guess, is these aircrafts, they don't move like aircrafts designed by humans. How do you explain the physics? Like they don't move by propulsion, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, how are these objects, do you think, how are they engineered?
Well, that's the thing that's fascinated, you know, the modern aerospace since it's the 50s, and uh, so there's a couple of interesting sort of comments. I'll start with the data. Um, I mean, in some cases, we had the sort of falling leaf pattern of these craft as they come down. So is that a clue to somehow the physics work? Um, or in other cases, we certainly have instantaneous accelerations and, thousands of Gs or 10,000s of Gs, squash humans against the wall. And clearly that's not our understandable physics. Um, so the question of how they work is there's lots of different theories and approaches. I mean, you have uh, it's somehow wrapped up in manipulating the zero point energy or the quantum vacuum, or there's some relationship between um, gravity control and those sort of exotic physics efforts. And a lot of it has to do with trying to do experiments that are that sort of get at that problem. Um, so the other pieces of data that you get from flying saucers is you get high magnetic fields, for example. People have had recording instruments, and then in the early days of Polaroid lenses, Polaroid glasses, you literally could count the interference fringes from the magnetic fields polarizing in the lenses and estimate how far away the craft was, and you suddenly get millions or tens of millions of Gauss. So you know that high magnetic fields are somehow involved. You also have several cases where you have the craft where the top part of the craft is rotating in one direction and the bottom half of the craft is rotating in the other direction. So you have this notion of counter rotation as being another clue as to what's going on. So counter rotation and high magnetic fields, those are some of the sort of first clues that you start to begin to build experiments on. to see if you can change gravity, um, and how you implement that. You often end up creating a Michelson-Morley interferometer, for example, which is a physics experiment where you try to change the speed of light. We have two beams passing through, one going through a high magnetic field and the other not. And so if you get a fringe shift, you can conclude that, oh yeah, you successfully changed the speed of light. So, I mean, there's a lot of complicated theories and approaches in books. I mean, I'm not the first person to talk or write about this. There's many books that have speculated on how do you do gravity control, and there's a lot of work that was done in the 50s that was, well publicized in newspaper articles and the work of the Lear-Sigler Corporation, John Lear, and then Douglas Aircraft Company and Convair and Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman, and there's many of these people were, and the Glenn L. Martin Company, were all working hard on trying to understand the nature of gravity. And my speculation is that they figured it out in the 60s or so, and that led to a classified program or a divergence in sort of the white world propulsion and the black world.
So we understand that now. There's research that's been done that's classified that understands how these things move, like the counter. I don't know how, I don't remember how you worded it. Counter rotation. So, like, do we understand how that works? Can we recreate some of the technology that we've uncovered from these objects?
Well, when you say we, the question is who is we?
The powers that be, let's say.
Yeah, I would say that yes, in some classified circles, has humanity figured out how to manipulate and control gravity? And the answer is yes. Is that available to the society or the global benefit of humanity? And the answer is no. It may be touching military assets or rogue, so to speak, or off-world or outside or breakaway civilization, as they say. But I think there's enough data and evidence that a concerted effort with money, you could recreate this and prove it, and that would allow the white world to have the advantages of a black box that you could bolt into an aircraft and would suddenly use 50% less jet fuel, or things like that.
When you say the white world, do you mean like just the mainstream, just the regular?
Yeah, us, the people, whatever it is, the 6 billion or 8 billion, whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
The generally accepted, what's in Google Scholar, for example. There's sort of, three pieces of information in the world. There is what's considered white, which is what's in Google Scholar, which is in our academics and taught and understood, and it's the physics of that. There is the black world, the classified top secret code word world, of classified patents and classified technological research and development that's been sponsored by a variety of three-letter agencies. And then there's sort of the trademarked or proprietary world, which is not, people don't file for patents, people don't explain what they're doing, they just do it and take advantage of it. Um,
Are those the Lockheeds and the Northrop Grumman?
I think so for the
Okay.
most part, or EG&G or Carlyle Group or um, the Aerospace Corporation, or um, there are parts or aspects of those environments that have unique. It's like the Coca-Cola formula.
Yeah.
People make their Pepsi like clones, but
Yeah.
the real formula is still the trade secret.
Right.
Um, Although I suspect that it's pretty indistinguishable now. So
Yeah. Do you think they share that proprietary information with the federal government? Like, how does that work? Do you think they're working as a
nah,
team?
nah,
Really?
not much. If you pay me to do research, we'll do it. And
Yeah.
you know, the the military services have requirements. Well, we want um, a drone that can circle the planet Earth for 4 days
Yeah.
at Mach 5 or whatever, and certainly Lockheed Skunk Works responds to building Aurora type spacecraft, or how do we build you know a craft that burns hydrocarbons and does that. Um, or even the B2, which is widely believed to use the Byfield Brown effect, or the work of T. Townsend Brown to charge the leading edge of the aircraft and positive, and the trailing edge negative, and that reduces drag and allows a much longer ranged aircraft for the same amount of fuel. But it's not a game changer. It's not a flying triangle that can hover over anywhere for a year.
Right. It's not they haven't discovered all the tech that we're witnessing with these different sightings and unidentified objects flying around, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly there may be. I mean, the New Jersey drones are a big buzz. What
Yeah.
are all those things? Are they China coming out of the water, or
Yeah.
are they just people with their drones flashing lights, and they're going over sensitive sites at Pax River where there's um, atomic weapons, or they go over a variety of different military bases where there's atomic weapons. And I suspect it's a mixed bag of real stuff and our stuff and um, hobbyists. Um, so
Do you think it's a mixed bag? Do you think there's actual entities involved that we don't know the identity of? I mean, the government told us that we shouldn't worry and that it's safe. Is that true? I would like to think as much as our military is, they pay attention, like we have a proactive military here in the US, no doubt. We take our defense seriously. So I'd like to think if the government believed there was no threat, then they wouldn't take action. Wouldn't they shoot those things out of the sky?
well, the history of attempts to intercept and engage um, with conventional fighter jets, from the Mantell incident of long ago to the Iranian fighters in the 76 to um, you know more modern stuff where we have the Tic Tacs and Top Gun jet fighters and F-35s trying to close on these crafts and uh, failing, and radar locks don't work, and things like that. Is that no, you don't shoot them down. You can't seem to shoot them down, um, and that's a problem. So in the past, people have said, well, why do they crash? And shooting them down is one of the earlier um, scenarios, be it proximity fuses or SAM missiles or things like that. Um, but the more common thing is, they're on a one-way mission across the galaxy and they're done, and it's a biological or biological mechanical craft that they just don't care about, and so they just leave it. Or you can go more complicated and say, well, since you exploded an atomic bomb planet Earth in 45, we know how this story ends because we've seen it 1,000 times before across the universe. And the best strategy to save your planet and humanity is to give you some advanced tech to excite you and focus your brightest scientists and engineers on figuring it out, and then ultimately recognize that you need more science and education to understand this, and therefore that's a better path for your maturity as a planet, to focus on the potential energy breakthroughs and educational aspects of that. So
it's a philanthropic mission. You think the crashes are intentional and they've left those there to help us enhance our own tech? Is that what you believe?
That's a scenario that is,
I've never heard that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's how do you take this planet that's clearly whacked and elevate it to join the cosmic kindergarten and be part of the Star Trek's Galactic Federation of advanced alien species, and so this is one way to do it. I suppose the other way to do it is the abduction scenario, where you're literally taking physically or mentally or spiritually people's minds or attitudes or emotions or empathy, and implanting or guiding people's focus.
Like telepathically? Is
Yeah,
that what you're
right.
saying?
Telepathically,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
literally, the abduction experience is, people disappear for hours or days, and
Yeah.
they come back with a renewed sense of purpose, or a different sense of purpose. And you even get that with your astronauts that go to the moon or go to space, and they see the planet Earth, and they almost universally come back changed, with a different mental overlay of what they should do with life, or how humanity should progress, and so forth. And so that's another path where people or the ETs may be influencing humanity to elevate it or transform it, hopefully for the good, rather than some evil, nefarious purpose.
Yeah, I think as humans, we need all the help we can get. So that's actually an encouraging theory if that was to be the case. I like that. Um, so I recently told a friend that I had some UFO experts on this podcast not too long ago, Leslie and Stephen Shaw. I love those two. Big shout out to Leslie and Stephen if you're listening. And I told you about them just when we were talking off mic, Ryan. And the person I spoke to kind of smirked, like, okay, are those crazy people who just see things? And I have to admit that I've always been myself kind of agnostic on this. Like, I didn't know one way or the other, but it's very clear that there's evidence showing that this stuff is real and it's legitimate. And you talk about this in your book, Magic Eyes Only,
Yeah.
that there are a lot less skeptics on this topic today than there used to be. Clearly, there's more details becoming public now that were kept confidential 50 or 60 years ago, right?
Yeah, that's certainly true. I mean, I I'm I you know, as I mentioned earlier, I started focusing with my father on the majestic documents, and in '94, in an earnest way. And during that process, I attended a lot of the Mutual UFO Network and other UFO conferences, and became increasingly frustrated that they weren't talking about the things that I thought were really important. And that is, give me the crashed hardware, give me the bodies. I need real hard evidence and science. And so I decided to start my own conference in 2003 called the UFO Crash Retrieval Conference in Las Vegas. And for 7 years, I ran that UFO conference with conference proceedings and, death by PowerPoint for 2.5 days and all the
death by PowerPoint.
Yeah,
I like
right,
that.
exactly.
I've been there.
And video and Linda Howe came and Richard Dolan came and George Knapp came and George Norrie came and they all gave talks and Whitley Strieber and my father and Nick Redfern and just the whole potpourri of people you see on television now, or Ancient Aliens, or the zeitgeist of ufology and the sort of kernel of people that have done a lot of research in the field, and we all focused on crash retrievals, and that's where my book Magic Eyes Only came from. Is that some in the audience said, aren't you going to be done with crashes in a conference or two? No, there's lots. And so I wrote the first edition, which had 74 crashes from around the world in 2005, and the second edition, which I just updated last year, in sort of November of 23, had 104 UFO crashes from around the world, and I stopped there. But I circle back around to David Grush's testimony before Congress, last in the summer of 23, I think, where he said, yeah, there are crashes, there's crash retrievals, and I said, well, thank goodness somebody has paid attention or is coming up to support the reality of this in a highly credible way. And, 18 years, we were 18 years ahead of time. And I'm sort of done with crashes, and I'm on to man-made UFOs and man-made craft, and when was the gravity breakthrough, and what can we learn about man-made craft, and that's and how do you crack gravity for the benefit of humanity, and because those are there's sort of two things that are going to change the world, in my opinion, and it all associated with energy. It's either fusion, antineutronic fusion, which is radiation-free fusion. That's my real day job as the CEO of Electric Fusion Systems. And gravity control. I mean, both equal basically unlimited free energy, and with that you can transform planet Earth. I mean, you end up rewiring it. There's hell to pay. There's, tremendous dislocations and changes that will occur. Because the Middle East will no longer be the epicenter of hydrocarbons, because they're going to make plastics and they're not going to be useful anymore. And so there's lots of power structure and political and sociological implications for gravity control and fusion, just the way there is with artificial intelligence. where you can get these AI agents to do stuff for you
Yeah.
all the time, and you're going to have basically AI labor that allows you to accomplish a lot more of what you want.
Yeah. So you said you're done with crash sites, but I want to dive into that a little bit because I've never met anyone who's worked on crash sites. You visited some crash sites yourself. Is that
Oh
right?
yeah. I mean, the book Magic Eyes Only is a compendium. It's a synthesis. It's a review of 104 crashes, and I'm not the lead investigator on all 104 crashes. Many great people have done, written whole books about Roswell or Kecksburg or Shag Harbor or Braxton County or many of these other credible Aurora, Texas or Kingman, Arizona. Just there's a long list of sites that people have done tremendous research about. And so what I did was basically assemble anywhere from a simple one page with a reference to 10 pages with lots of references and lots of research that have been done about a particular crash. And so
Yeah.
you get in the book, in essence, a review of all these, and you go from chapter to chapter, and you go, "Wow, ooh, that one's cool. Oh, I'm excited about that." And I learned something there, or all it takes is just one of these babies to be true, and then your mindset shifts. And that's my goal. The goal was to have somebody's mindset shift based on the preponderance of the evidence. But as to specific crashes that I've visited or sites, I mean, the one that I've done the most with is the Cape Girardeau, Missouri, 1941 event, where you interview witnesses. You go there, you look at National Archives historical aerial maps, try to pin down precisely where and when this happened, and that's the big challenge. Is with all of them, is precisely when and precisely where you did it happen, and with that you can figure out more.
So, okay, talk to me like I'm a complete idiot. You have very deep academic understanding of all this. You've studied it for a long time. You've written books on the topic. You're well versed in this. What are your biggest takeaways from visiting crash sites? What have you taken from that and has been most fascinating?
Um, well, the proof is out there. The evidence is in the dirt, and you can go dig it up. You can go dig it up today, and all it takes is your time, serious money typically, and you can end up with some aspect of proof, from metallic shards to ultimately the hieroglyphic hatch, which is the holy grail of what crash retrieval people are looking for, or craft, either before the military gets it and takes it. So that's what you want to try to do. That's the biggest opportunity. But just to give you a sense of the challenge is that invariably you need to make multiple trips to a particular site. You may end up doing aerial photography at the National Archives because these things are historic, and you make multiple trips to College Park, Maryland, and spend a week in the National Archives trying to figure out precisely where and when. And then you have third-party experts that are either metal detection or aerial photography analysis, or you find some witnesses or newspaper article analysis, and then you find more witnesses that you want to, let's interview them. Are they still alive? Are they dead? Can we interview their children? What is the fire department? What was the military response? Who was the particular military organizations that were dispatched to the area to find out what was going on. You it just can explode into a book, a time, a year, lots of man hours, $50,000, $100,000 easily to take a sort of undeveloped crash event into something that's far more authentic. And so that's, I mean, in the book, every one is ranked and rated with this needle of authenticity, be it no, we've investigated and it's a lot of it's BS or very marginal, and then there's lots of research been done on Roswell, for example, and it's very authentic. And but most things start in the middle, and they need money and time and effort to push the needle of authenticity lower or higher, and that's where crashes are at. And and sort of why I'm done with them is nobody's signed up. Hey, here's $1 million to go jump on the most important crashes around the world, and get them more robust and more credible.
Right. And so you said the evidence is in the dirt. There's fragments that can be found, but as for like the primary larger pieces of the wreckage, that's clearly not going to be at those sites. Where did that go?
Well, that's a good question. And our first clue, it comes from the leaked Special Operations Manual, Extraterrestrial Entities, Technology, Recovery, and Disposal, specialoperationsmanual.com, for example, or you can download it and read it at majesticdocuments.com. And there's a page in there which says how to pack up the bodies, the evidence, the details, and it says ship it off to Wright-Patterson Blue Lab, and then there's other locations, Area 51 S4 and so forth. So you sort of know where they go, but do you have access to that? No. If you want to get to Area 51 S4, I would recommend that you take at least a dozen tanks and 300 or 400 men and just through the front gate, and your own anti-aircraft battery, because the F-35s are going to try to kill you.
Yeah.
And so, that's your only hope. And do a blitzkrieg in there and take control of it. So, that's where it is in part. I mean, it's compartmentalized. I mean, they do propulsion in one area, they do navigation in the other, they do materials in another. They keep the biology of all the aliens separate, and they maybe keep it in Utah or in other locations around the world. And so it's not all in one place.
Right. And do you think they've preserved those alien bodies? Are those things still in the same condition that they were in when they were found, do you think? I know you haven't been there, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
Same condition is a good question. I suspect that they, like human bodies, they may degrade. But certainly they would, in the early days, put them in formaldehyde like everything else, and they may have more sophisticated preservation techniques now, and some may be autopsied up. I mean, for example, in the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit document, it talks about Detlef Bronk and Charles Ethan Ray doing the autopsy of an alien. And so this is a Roswell alien. And so no doubt they autopsied it up, and, the liver or the organ or something like that goes into a different bucket than the brain or the eyes or so forth.
Is the biology similar that you know of?
That's a great question. I suspect that the it's both similar and different in that the rumors are that people have done DNA analysis and it's different. In other words, they have, maybe another pair in the DNA sequence, or what is it, TCGNA or something like that, and then there's another batch. I mean, very few.
Are they biologically superior
Oh,
to
oh,
us?
absolutely. I'm sure they are. I mean,
Really?
yeah. I mean, you know that from the mental telepathy alone, of just your mind can be overwhelmed with their mind. The Vulcan mind meld sort of experience, or you know, I if your brain volume is suddenly, I don't know what the official number is, but it's probably 2x. Um, and it's widely believed that humans only use like 10% or 15% of our existing human capacity. Boy, if we could just figure out how to use more of it, maybe more brain neurotropic factor, or more rosemary tea, which accelerates that. Um,
Is that right? Rosemary
yeah,
tea does
yeah,
that? That's a little biohack.
yeah,
I
that's
didn't know
right.
that. Thanks for the
There you
tip.
go. Rosemary tea. Yeah. Just 1 cup a day for a week, and there's an increase in brain neurotrophic. I mean, you can get the same thing if you go get on the treadmill and do some high intensity intervals. You also can increase your brain neurotropic factor, and um, you know, basically your brain is younger and faster and so forth. So there's lots of biohacks for doing that. But the point is, the ETs are bipedal. They got a big brain. I mean, they're sort of human-like, but I would say fundamentally their biology is different. I mean, it's evolved. I mean, maybe with CRISPR and everything that we're doing right now, people are going, I want a designer kid, and I want him to be smarter. I want him to be taller. I want him to be more athletic. And, as it is, you can just open the Stanford newspaper in the college and say, I'm looking for an egg donor for, my family. If you've got an SAT score of 1500 or better, you're over 5'10" and blonde-haired and blue-eyed, I'll pay you $25,000 for your egg. And I mean, that happens all the time. And people don't want to talk about it, but it's real. And then there's the whole designer aspect of, well, there may be moral and ethical challenges associated in the United States with designer babies, so to speak. But you think China has that problem, or some other country? We're in a race for brain power.
Yeah.
And in my day job for Fusion, China is minting 10 times more PhDs in nuclear fusion than the United States is every year.
Wow.
And and this and they're focusing on it because they think that's the future and that's what needs to happen.
Yeah. I was reviewing the SOM, that Special Operations Manual. I think it was off your website, and you mentioned that. And it's a fascinating read. And one part of it says that one wreckage site was found was the direct result of military action. Do you know anything more about that incident?
Not really. I'm wondering whether or not, what page is that on? I'm not so sure.
I'd have to
there's
go
not some
look,
confusion
but
there, but it's
okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
I
I'm
mean, the
wrong.
Special Operations Manual is a how-to manual It says a little bit about the purpose
Okay.
of the Majestic 12 group.
Unless
Yeah,
I'm
well,
mixing it
that's
up with your
okay.
book, Ryan,
Yeah, no,
which
no
I
worries.
apologize if that's the case.
It's how do you pack up the bodies? How do you do a cover story? How do you keep the public away? You tell them it's a down satellite or radioactive or biological spill or something, and it's a it's a tool in 1954 or 1954 to 57 or sort of time frame that the Air Force, I think, used to give to these Navy SEAL teams or Delta Force teams that would recover these craft and bodies and so forth, and the importance of um, that whole process of where to ship it off. And you highlighted it is the most authentic and the most damning Majestic document because it is a top secret magic military assessment of the Joint Intelligence Committee magic document. So this is the one that's the most powerful, the most
It's
authentic.
fascinating.
It's undergone the most research. My father and I retyped it all. We talked to government printing experts. We did all sorts of
Yeah.
checks on style and etymology and fonts and this was leaked in 1994 and this is when InDesign and Quark Express and some of the Adobe tools for layout of documents were just a glint in some software engineer's eye. And there was nothing there. So the whole notion of computerized faking was not even viable.
There is a concern that the technology discovered at these crash sites would be dangerous if it got into the wrong hands. Can you talk a little bit
Is it
more about that?
dangerous? Well, yeah. I mean, there's a couple of different types of danger here.
I guess I'm talking like militarily.
Right.
If a rogue nation state or an enemy state of the U.S. got their hands on this, they could weaponize that technology against us.
Yeah, and
right? Is that a legitimate
absolutely.
concern?
And this was the Cold War environment in the 40s, 50s, and even in the 60s. So the first thing that's real obvious, and the Majestic documents talk about this, is the opportunity to take the serums collected from the aliens at the Roswell craft offer the potential of tremendous biological and virological weapons. So the first thing that, in the 50s or so, they were doing is they were in the middle of, peak biological and chemical warfare. And so they're taking serums, they're mixing it with, anthrax or, who knows what sort of level 4 biological hazards. If you think COVID was bad, wait until they mix it with an alien strain or something. So that's who knows if they actually did that. I would think they did do it. They may have destroyed it. They may have decided this is unethical or not the right thing to do, or wasn't effective, or I don't know what. But that's certainly a path that's a potential weapon. The other thing is that you go after the material science, and these craft have skin and they have alloys and layers, and let's try to figure this out. Can you make something interesting there? But I don't think as a weapon goes that there's there. There are also in the Special Operations Manual, there's a line item that says weapons in good working order, I think, shipped to Area 51 S4. So they're made
weapons made by the aliens.
Weapons made by the aliens. They must have included that because they either found them or thought they might find them, and it was important to deal with that. I'm just trying to find that.
Do you think those would have been used they weren't coming here to launch an offensive against us, but do you think those were for defensive purposes in case we
Oh, that
attacked
seems,
them?
yeah, I'm sure it's logical that, I mean, you want to stun a dog or a human? Yeah, I mean, do you have lethal weapons? Do the ETs have lethal weapons? I suspect yes.
Hmm.
It's like, but, you know, do you use them? Under what conditions do you use them? The guys at Creech Air Force Base in Las Vegas, they got three people sitting there saying, "Okay, we've been following this particular terrorist, and we have a Hellfire missile and asset circling overhead. Um, we have to have approval from the intelligence people. We have to have approval from the command people, and from the sort of counterintelligence people, I think, and that everybody has to agree that yeah, we want to push the button and kill these people. It's a protocol, and I'm sure the aliens have the same thing, is that they have a protocol.
Right.
Now, it may happen at the speed of
Protocol.
light or mental
Yeah.
telepathy or, you know, yeah, that's right.
Hmm.
Not that we know of. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Talk a little bit about the physical makeup of these UFOs. They're metallic in their construction. The engineering is clearly superior. They have radar systems, or we have radar systems that have clocked them at speeds up to 7,000 miles per hour. Are those numbers right? Like, what can you tell us?
Well, I suspect that that's some piece of data. The ones of where people are looking at it and it suddenly disappears over the horizon in 1 second means that, you know, hey, if there's 1,000 Gs or 2,000 Gs, and you can calculate how many miles per hour that is. And can they, you know, I'm reminded of Star Trek. You know, there's impulse and there's warp. And I suspect that they,
Yeah.
in the atmosphere, they may operate on more impulse power, which may be thousands of miles an hour or thousands of Gs. But in space on the mothership, I think they
Yeah.
can go light speed or faster than light speed. You know, when they say let's go warp 3, that's 3 orders of magnitude faster than the speed of light or something like that. So that's, I think that's very believable that they can go very fast. As far as specific numbers go, I don't really know. I mean, there's a good book by Paul Hill called Unidentified Flying Objects, I think, which is Paul was a NASA scientist and collected all this data about performance characteristics of UFOs, and did a good technical analysis and treatise of the capabilities of UFOs. It's an older book, maybe 20 years old, but it's still, the data is rock solid. And so there's
Yeah.
that.
This stuff is here to stay. I mean, you said the evidence is out there. There's been testimony before Congress. NASA scientists have published works on this. You've done a lot of research on this. Like, the jury's out. This stuff is real. There's no more contesting this. There's something out there, and we're starting to uncover things that the naysayers don't have much to push back on now.
Yeah.
It sounds like, right?
Well, that's true. And my impression of there's three major challenges in ufology. There's the challenge of credibility. How do we improve it? How do we get more of it? How do we get to the New York Times? How do we improve the overall credibility and reduce the giggle factor?
Yeah.
There's there's leadership. Who can lead and advance this cause and leverage and amplify everybody's efforts? The work of your podcasts and others to try to bring the information forward, or the work of the whistleblowers to bring it forward, and the work of governments to stand up and tell the truth about it. And then finally, the elephant in the room is money, and that in 1994, I think I wrote a paper called Ufology in Search of Leadership, and there was maybe $250,000 spent on everything in ufology, all the books and the periodicals and the conferences and everything. And today it's maybe $2-3 million. I'm ignoring ancient aliens and television stuff, which is like marginal at times. But you need $50 million spent on it, with more books and more investigation and more physics analysis and real effort to try to crack the enigma and bring it forward in a big way. And my recent effort to improve credibility is a book that I wrote with Anthony DiLorenzo called UFOs, Who Knows? And it's a book of famous quotations, 185 people, scientists, engineers, astronauts, politicians, presidents, religious leaders, a quote and a bio about each one. And people look through this. Again, this is the compendium. This is the sort of preponderance of famous quotations of people. And you go, wow, there's a lot of important people, celebrities, that have said a lot of pretty stunning stuff about ufology, and maybe it's not such a voodoo science, or and I can have it on my coffee table and start a conversation.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, how can people get more familiar with your work and who you are?
Well, I have a whole variety of websites that take people in different directions depending upon what they want to do. One of my latest efforts is the AI ufologist, and this answers the 30 big questions the common man has. What's the agenda? Why are they here? Why do they take humans? Why can't the government get along? And it was all based on my work on a website called UFO Dex, UFODEX.com, which is a giant database of AI-enabled data, some 611,000 pages right now and growing.
Wow.
Books and periodicals all around ufology, and you can ask any question you want about ufology. But the AI ufologist has got a good compendium. It's on Amazon. Everything's on Amazon. And then the majesticdocuments.com has all the majestic documents. People can look at them, read them, download them, and think about them, and talk a little bit about that. Then there's a whole dedicated website for the Special Operations Manual called specialoperationsmanual.com, which delves into all the objections, all the responses, why it's authentic, all the details around the authenticity of that, and the provenance that we found, and so forth. And so Majestic Documents, UFODEX, AI Ufologist, working on, Magic Eyes Only has its own, the mother lode of all the crashes has its own website. So that's where people can get a hold of me, and you can contact me and email me from any of those sites.
Okay, great. Well, really appreciate the work that you're doing. I think your research is fascinating and groundbreaking, and there's a lot more I want to discuss on this topic. We're out of time today, but I hope you'll join us again, and we can dive deeper into some of this stuff if you'll join us.
Oh, be delighted to. we can go deeper in many different directions.
I love it. Well, thank you. Thanks for being here. And that's Ryan S. Wood. That'll do it for this edition. We are out of here. You guys know where to find us. MikeCPodcast.com. We're also on YouTube at the Mike C Podcast. And drop us a comment. Let us know. Do you believe in UFOs? Do you believe in extraterrestrial beings? Or do you think it's all a farce? We want to hear from you guys. We love getting your feedback. And until next time, thanks, everybody.